I have, let's look at the income tab. I have 3 more probes than him. So actually that 1 chrono boost extra that I spent on the Nexus, maybe even 2 or 3 chrono boost extra, I've a little bit lost count, has made a big difference. I think he might have missed some probes, but I just made a 29th probe, and I think I'm deciding to cut probes here. It's a pretty reasonable thing to do when you think you might die, is to cut probes. Yeah, I think I mentioned that I cut probes to get these gateways out. And getting my sentries hot up at the front there, needing to pull those back. The way these dynamics work in Protoss vs. Protoss, you do want Zealots out, and you want them at the front. They're really good at dealing damage. They're better, I mean, this is funny. They're better at Stalkers than dealing damage, and they're better at Stalkers than taking damage. The only thing Stalkers have an advantage is the range and the speed, right? So you always want the Zealots in the front. They should always, always, always be your front lines. You should never see Zealots of your opponents hitting anything but your own Zealots. See these Zealots soaking up all of the painful damage there. And oh no, Zealots getting to work on the sentries. I'm not paying attention. They take out both sentries in an instant. And sentries are expensive, right? And Zealots are cheap. Sentries are expensive. So don't tank with your sentries. He's getting a bit too aggressive here, although he does know that he killed the sentries, so doesn't have to worry about force fields. But yeah, too aggressive to get without Zealots in the front, and he does trap my Zealots with a nice sentry that he warped in. But in the meantime, while all this is going on, you have to realize I'm getting more and more ahead because I quit on a pretty good number of probes, and I feel pretty good, 29 probes on one base. So sort of fully saturated should be 22 probes, but you can really support up to about 30 and see an advantage there. So I've got an income advantage, which we can, oh yeah, we can see the income advantage here, and it's a small advantage, right? But income advantages add up over time. Does he not have enough guys on gas? That's weird. Why does it show his gas income is so much less than mine? There's something wrong here. So anyway, here he definitely gets overzealous. Doesn't have enough Zealots, though. And so most of these, yeah, I mean, the unit's lost, he's lost a little more, and most of these engagements have been going just a little bit my way. Not too much, but just a little bit my way. I did, I think, screw up in the first engagement, but I missed that, so we're not going to look at that just now. And here I decide to delay, just so I can think about how to spend my, like, 700 gas, because I've been warping in a lot of Zealots. And I realized, okay, I can grab some more sentries, and I can go back into stall mode, because I can actually afford a bunch of sentries right now. And he is going to be charging up the ramp when I'm not quite ready. That is okay, not much happens. Oh, and this is the thing I was going to say. I did go for robotics. And the first thing I'm getting out of the robotics is an immortal. And that is because immortals are awesome. And it will really punish an opponent who is going a little bit too stalker heavy. And I think my opponent, I should say, is going a little bit stalker heavy. He's expanding, right? I don't know he's expanding, so I'm getting an observer out. And actually, the biggest thing that I want to know from this observer is whether or not he's expanding. That's all. I know that he kind of has two major transitions from this. Of course, there's a lot of things he could do, but we'll just say two major transitions. One is that he goes into robotics, like me, and the other is that he expands, right? I know he cannot afford both. How do I know that? Well, look, I'm spending all my money, right? He has a similar-sized army, maybe not quite as big anymore, but his army has been similarly sized for most of this battle. So we have about the same army composition, right? My income, I think, is really good. So his is certainly not better, but possibly slightly worse than mine. And I am going robotics, and I'm spending most of my money. What does that mean? It means that since he has strictly less resources than me, because he's been losing a little bit in these battles, he cannot afford both to go robotics and expand. It's impossible, right? Because I couldn't. And there we go. Line of Zealots warping in. So I do go for the robotics bay. And the reason is basically I know that this forces him to rush to Colossus. Because he could not expand and go for robotics? I mean, he's going for robotics now, right? But this is so much later than my robotics. I have a Colossus on the way already. So basically, he either has to kill me now, which I don't think he can do, or rush to Colossus. And he cannot rush to Colossus and expand. So when I see this expansion, I am thinking, well, so maybe this is checkmate, right? Because my Colossi are going to be out. I'm going to survive until then. I can get 2 and then attack, and it will be very hard for him to even have 1 out. And, you know, one of the things you should take away from this, a lot of people are exhausted by the amount of foregating in PvP. It's important to realize that there's actually a very complex and dynamic matchup here, but there's a lot of mistakes you can make, and if you correct those mistakes, you can play out some pretty interesting mid-games, but you can see those mistakes are sometimes subtle. His robotics bay is late, right? My Colossi are just about out. His robotics bay is only half done. I have been spending basically the maximum number of chrono boosts to get these Colossi out ASAP. And I know he's expanded. Oh, by the way, I actually know that he's going robotics because I had an observer here, and that observer was sniped. So I know he has an observer. Okay. That means he must have a robotics bay, right? That means he could be going for Colossi, but I also know the approximate timing of the bay because I think the first thing he made was an observer. Okay, so I'm actually in pretty good knowledge of the situation, right? His income has shot up because he did expand and he made a bunch of probes to take advantage of that. So his income is way higher than mine right now, but that's okay because he's dead. He has absolutely no way of dealing with these Colossi. I kind of block myself off a little bit with my force fields here. No, they're working out pretty well, or his force fields rather. And I sort of forget the Colossi can stomp on them. But anyway, that's GG. That game that sort of looked kind of back and forth and pretty even ended fairly abruptly because of his late transition to Colossus. So maybe this, I don't know, this should shed a little bit of light for you guys on why a lot of people think PvP is all about foregating, because his attack came so fast, so early, that it would have been hard for me to hold that off if I went for a quick robotics or something like that. On the other hand, the fact that I went foregate meant that he would have a hard time going for fast tech, because I could walk over and kill him if he did that. So the opening was constrained a little bit in that regard. And also, moving towards the mid-game, it was constrained because we both sort of had to go, putting up the quotation marks with my fingers, had to go to Colossi at that point. But you have to say, if we had both gotten to Colossi at a reasonable time, then it would have been even, and we would have gotten our expansions, and it would have started looking sort of like a more reasonable matchup or a game of StarCraft. So don't worry too much about PvP being boring. Instead, look at the ways that it's really interesting and dynamic, and look at the ways that you can improve. If you say, well, I have to foregate. Okay, so try to improve your foregate. Try to get those chrono boosts down on exactly the right places at exactly the right times. And try to make sure you keep getting those probes out so you can win the economic war, if it comes to that. And try to secure your ramp, and try to scout, and try to take your expansion, but do these things very carefully. Very, very carefully. Because this is a somewhat fragile matchup. Hope this was an enjoyable analysis for you guys. I'm going to probably go do some pro games soon. So you people who like that, which I think is a lot of people, stay tuned. And for now, this is modulistack saying bye now.